I've gotten really into no code in the last like 6 months or so. Like I'm still quite new to this, and I think most people are, to be honest, because it's just kind of a newish thing. But I've gotten really, really excited about it, and I've annoyed a lot of my teammates. So when Michael from One Codebase in Aberdeen asked if I wanted to do a session about it, I was like, yeah, okay, fine. I'll stop bothering my teammates for a while and start bothering the broader tech ecosystem. So I'm head of partnerships at Codebase. You can see my email address there, my Twitter. Do follow up with me if you'd like to after this. I am always up for chatting about no-code stuff. So yeah. So today, firstly, presentation type thing. I'm going to talk about what it is and why it's important. Then I'm going to build something live in front of you, which could go just massively wrong. We'll see what happens. Fingers crossed we get something sort of at the end of it that we can actually talk about. And then there'll be plenty of time for Q&A after that. So firstly, what is no-code? So no-code, broadly speaking, it's making software without code. I think that's kind of an easy enough thing to sort of latch onto. It's described quite often as like a movement, because it's this kind of wonderful moment when people who aren't, from a technological background can start building software. They can build apps. They can build web apps, websites, whatever they want to. And I think it's kind of an empowering thing. It means that, people who have great ideas, great ways to improve the world, make new businesses, they can start actually building software in quite a meaningful way, rather than just making a landing page that doesn't really do anything. The thing I'm not going to talk about today in this is operational no-code. So this is actually probably the most interesting bit of no-code. I do a lot of this internally in my day job at Codebase. So I love Zapier. There's a million tools like Zapier now. What these tools do is they basically say, if something happens, something else should happen. So, here's a list of some stuff that we use in Codebase. I'm hoping you can see my little blue cursor jumping around the screen. But, so say perhaps someone makes a new a Google Calendar thing. It might, send an email with Gmail and then complete a thing in HubSpot. So, we know what's happened with that thing. A real tangible example of operational no-code is this event. I hate, like, with Codebase, we have like 5 different places we need to post events, like on our website. We need to make it in Eventbrite. We need to make it in Zoom. We need to put it on our Mighty networks. We need to post it in Slack. And it does take up a lot of our time. So I made this nifty little thing in Zapier where it would take all the information from the new Eventbrite, which does automatically create a new Zoom if you want it to. It would schedule an event in our Mighty networks using all of that data. And then another little thing would look for a new event in Mighty networks and post a message to Slack. And it just slightly automates me out of the job, but it's the kind of, like boring stuff that I don't really want to do. That's one niche example. This isn't what the talk about today is about, but I think it's an important thing to acknowledge that this is a big thing. So the no-code landscape right now looks like this. This is like a sort of broad look at all of the different things you can play with if you're interested in learning about no-code. Lots of names here I'm sure you'll all recognize, like, say down at the bottom right, Stripe and Typeform and HubSpot, MailChimp. These are all ways of creating something that used to be made with code, but without using code. For today, I'm going to focus mostly on this top left bit, talking quite a bit about Bubble, this one here in particular, but I'll speak about Wix and Squarespace and Webflow as well, just a little bit. But it's not actually, this looks like a lot of things, but it's compared to like, the marketing ecosystem or the travel tech ecosystem. There's so much stuff happening in these things, and no code is actually quite niche still. It's quite exciting times for it. So in terms of things like Squarespace and Wix and Webflow, these are kind of a great entry way to think about no code, because you can put together a website in like literally an hour, and you can have it live on the web. You can show your mum, you can show your customers. Hopefully it leads to some business. These are great. If you deliver like a consultancy, you run a restaurant, it's just having information that leads to someone, say, contacting you or engaging with your service. At the far right of the spectrum, I would say we have Bubble, which is frankly a lot more difficult. It does take time to learn, but at the end of it, it lets you create web apps, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. So, things like Airbnb and Deliveroo and stuff where you can actually engage with the data in a meaningful way. I've been kind of playing with this metaphor in my head. I don't know if it really lands, but like the far left of this spectrum is like IKEA. It's like a Billy bookcase. You can just buy it and put it up, and it's going to look great. Well, it's going to look okay, but it's going to do the job, and you kind of don't need to think too much about it. The far right bubble, that's like, a bespoke bit of carpentry, joinery, building this most like perfect bookshelf that fits your records and your record unit and does everything that you want it to. So it's a lot more work, but a lot more adaptability, and yeah. So let's take a little look at Bubble. I chose Bubble because it's something that is great for throwing together things like MVPs for like a marketplace style app, and we'll maybe define that in a second, but it lets you create dynamic websites that can take user data and play it back to different users or the same user in a meaningful way. So that's what all of these websites are doing. So Airbnb, Reddit, Eventbrite, they're taking data from someone and they're putting it back to someone else in a way that pleases them. Airbnb takes a load of information about properties, and it has a load of people who are interested in renting those properties, and so they'll click, I'm searching for an Edinburgh property, and find it that way. And what I want to look at is like, how would we deconstruct Airbnb into a no-code thing? Because you can totally build all of these things in Bubble, no problem at all. Like whether or not you can sell them and make a business out of them, whole other question. But if you were to build Airbnb on Bubble, what you'd have is Bubble being the ultimate experience that your users have when they come to the website. So they would see, your brand, this button goes here, if they click this, this happens, yada, yada, yada. But Bubble is just brilliant at talking to all of these other things. And this is tip of the iceberg for the stuff it will talk to. So if you want to take payments, I'm sure you will, Stripe can be set up. I couldn't believe it with my first Bubble project. When I set up Stripe, it took about 2 hours and I had to register a limited company to do it. But someone could pay me money for the thing I created. It was a bizarre moment. HubSpot, if you want to keep track of your customer data, it's great. It will talk to that. Zapier will do lots of automation stuff behind the scenes. Like say you want to send texts to people who are renting houses or to hosts, then you can automatically do that rather than you sat there on your 3310 texting away. And then things like Google Maps, and it's kind of obvious, but you can see like how no-code lets you create these new constellations out of existing stars in the startup ecosystem, and without ever writing a line of code. So that's it for the presentation part. I'd really like to just get into building something in front of you, and then we can kind of take it from there in the Q&A type way. I'm going to build a two-sided marketplace. So I think it's where a lot of startups kind of start. People have an idea for unbundling Gumtree into like, maybe it's just like a pizzeria, a pizza service that only sells, Napoli-style pizzas, like, or something like that. So it's a good place to start just in terms of actually building something. But I guess my kind of warning here is that, as my man Jeff says, like, I'm not here to tell you whether or not you should build these startups. Like, your idea might not be very good. I'm not the person to tell you that. Jim Newbury did a really great session with One Codebase a few months ago about that side of things. I'm just here to show you that if you wanted to build it, you can build it. Cool. I think I've just got a few more pictures of Jeff Goldblum, just because, what a man. Look at him. This is how I should do my presentations from now on, dressed like that, holding a glass of wine. So I'm going to jump over to Bubble. How are we doing for time? Okay, cool. We're doing okay. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to even set a timer in a kind of ready, steady, cook style, let's build an MVP together way. I'm going to put it for 25 minutes, and I'm just going to see what we can get done in this time. Can I just get a sense check because I can't see any of your lovely faces. Oh, I see Michael's lovely face. Michael, do you want to say hello quickly, since you kindly invited me along to do this today?
Sure, no problem. Hi, everyone. And yeah, so thanks a lot for coming to do this. It's really interesting because I think one of the questions I get nearly all the time when we're doing sessions with early stage companies is like, I absolutely need a co-founder. I can't build my MVP. I don't want to give 30 grand to a company to build something for me, so they keep the IP. So I'm really excited to do this session and get Oli along, because I think that this is a really great way to start knocking together ideas, seeing if it works, and getting out there and trying to get traction. So to Oli's point, you know, whether or not you should build it or not, that's a whole other can of worms. But if you're trying to evaluate whether that is the case, this is a good way to do it without spending piles of cash and lots of stress having someone else do it. So won't use up all your 25 minutes, Oli, because I appreciate you've not even started the app yet. But yeah, really appreciate the talk, and I hope I'm sure we'll get some good questions at the end, but also happy to take things by email afterwards if need be. So back to you, Oli. Thanks very much.
So I realized I actually gave myself 25 hours there, but I think, yeah, that would probably be beyond the realms of what people are interested in. But to give you actually some flavor about how long it took me to learn how to use Bubble properly and like get an app out there that people wanted to use-ish, it took about 80 hours, I would say. So it's not an insignificant amount of time, but it's not huge. And that was just learning by building the whole way. And I built this MVP of this community management tool, and I took it to a bunch of community managers, and they said, hey, that's great, but actually we just use Slack. And that meant that I rebuilt the whole thing as a Slack plugin. And I think that's the kind of MVP journey that you want to have. You don't want to spend, I mean, Michael was quite generous with his 30 grand there, but you know, 6 figures plus these things can cost. That you don't want to spend all that money to discover no one wants it. So create a thing, kind of throw it together, strip it back to the most sort of minimal features that you think it will need, and then just start talking to your customers. But we're not here to talk about whether or not you should do it. We're here to actually build something. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the Bubble interface. If I can shrink away Zoom. Can I actually just get a sense check, Michael? Can you see the screen okay? Like you can see the sort of interface in front of.
Yeah, see everything on it. It's great.
Oh, everything. My goodness. So this is what you're greeted with when you fire up Bubble. You're actually normally shown a bunch of sort of random junk that they put in front of you, but I deleted all of that to make it a bit clearer. You have this bit here in the middle, which is your website. That's where you're going to build it. On the left, you have elements that you can add to the website. Then a bunch of stuff on the left around workflows and data that we'll come to in a wee bit. But what I wanted to do was just start by creating, you know, a simple landing page where any user can come along and see, you know, what your site is. I thought because this is, you know, a one code base event, one code base being an Aberdeen center of, you know, energy, that we might do a secondhand petrol marketplace. Do you remember like 2 months ago, there were loads of people like filling carrier bags of petrol because they were worried it was going to run out or the prices would go up. So I think we should support those people in making it easier for them to sell secondhand petrol. Again, I'm not saying you should do this, but it's something to, you know, anchor our build on. So of the visual elements, these will all kind of make sense to you, I think. Like, you know, you can add text, you can add buttons, icons, like little sort of, yeah, flags and Twitter, you know, all that kind of stuff. Images. Let's just start by putting some text in. I'm going to call this thing the worst name ever, but Petrolify. So immediately I can, you know, see that my text has appeared in the middle of the screen here. Great. There's a rich text editor, so if you wanted to make it bigger, change the font, I've ended up with this slightly funky green color, but let's go with blue. Cool. So that's the name of my startup. I'm going to center that horizontally. One thing we maybe want to talk about at the end is how like Bubble and things like this will very quickly make you realize you're not a designer. Like things like Squarespace and Wix, they make your website look great out of the box. This is not going to look great. This is going to look terrible, but it will function, which is the main thing. Yeah, block of text in the middle there. You can have smaller text below because you always need a tagline, right? Like Let's make it a wee bit smaller for all your second-hand petrol needs. It's hard to imagine someone coming to this website and, you know, being into the idea, but we'll keep going with it. So again, I'll just center these. You can add images as well, like of course, you know, on your website to look really like nothing at all. So I got this image ready to go, just to be a bit of a banner. Spot the reference, put it in the chat. Maybe we could even have. No, it's not happy with that. I'm not going to upset it. I'm just going to have the text below the image. Cool. So this is just me being a bit silly at this point. But what I want to start showing you is what makes Bubble different to Squarespace and Wix and all that jazz. So let's start getting some information from our customers who are coming to this website. We have an input. So these things down here are ways that people can put data into the website. So multi-line inputs such as more text, checkboxes, date time pickers. So maybe if you were doing an Airbnb, you want to have like the check-in date or whatever. But this is just a way that people can interact with your site. So I think maybe the first bit of information you might get is just their name. It's a nice place to start. I'm going to copy and paste this. And email, of course, when you're signing up. You need to get someone's email. And in fact, if I check the content format type to be email, it means that it's going to be expecting an email. So, you know, like when you put in an email in an email box and it's like, it says this isn't an email because there's no @ sign, Bubble will do that for you. And then lastly, we're going to need a password because this is a marketplace where they sign in, they can see, you know, what petrol they've bought or sold behind the scenes. So they'll need to be able to not only log in, not only sign up, but log in and come back. So lastly, we'll need a password. And super cool thing about Bubble, if I change the type to password, this means that it will never store this data for you to see. Like, so this is fully encrypted, like it's not stored in your databases at all, which I will show the database for this in a wee bit. It's just, you know, they handle all of that and they don't want you seeing people's passwords, which is great. And here's a slight usability moment where I've not actually written a thing saying what these things are for. So, sign up. Oh, it's gone green. Beautiful, beautiful. Nice. And so the last thing this would need, I mean, if you've used a website before and registered for something, you put in some information and you need something to acknowledge that information. So I'm going to stick a little button down here. A nice little teal color to it. I didn't pick these colors, by the way. These are like standard things. I don't have this good a taste. So there we go. We have the first page of this thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the preview button up here. And I believe because I'm sharing my whole screen, you should be able to see this as well. And Michael, maybe just give me a heads up if it's the tab hasn't changed. So this is actually a live version of this website where, in fact, Michael, just give me a heads up that I'm not talking to an empty room. My headphones haven't broken or something.
We can see everything, Oli. It's good.
Great, thank you. It's so weird giving Zoom presentations like this. This website is actually live right now. I'm pretty certain if you went to this link right here, you'd be able to even see it. You don't need to. Don't worry. That's not like a test. But if you go here, you'll be able to put in your name. Hi, I'm Oli. My email, Oli at. See, where's the at? Ali at test.com. My super secret password, and then click sign up. One password even recognizes it as a password, which is pretty cool. But nothing happens. And this is just it. This is like Bubble in a nutshell. It's not going to do anything unless you tell it to. So in Squarespace, if you had like a sign up bit, it would create a button saying sign up. It would automatically do the thing for you. Bubble is not going to do that. It's not going to treat you so nicely. And therein lies both the difficulty of using it, but also the, you know, sort of pushing the boundaries of what you can actually build. So going back to the buildy bit, behind the scenes in Bubble, in fact, I'll click on this button and show you from this way. You have things called workflows. And this is basically the same as the Zapier example I gave you before, which says, if this thing happens, something else should happen. Now, this is internal within Bubble for now. But what we're saying is when the button sign up is clicked, we should, so all of the things that can happen. So, there's lots of stuff to do with the person's account, going to different pages, creating things, which it calls like any data type of thing. So it might be that it's a list of the petrols that we have for sale, could be a thing. We'll come back to those. You can send emails, send meeting requests. I don't have any plugins installed right now, but if you do, like, sky's the limit. You can do so many different things. It can talk to all of those different apps, and that's a constellation that I referenced earlier. So we want to sign a user up, and it will say, right, well, in order to do that, I need an email. And fortunately, I made an input that was an email, and it wants to know that thing's value. And it wants to know a password. And I made an input that is someone's password. Now, there's no input for someone's name, so I'm just going to add another little thing that says, I don't have a field for it. Let's take a brief digression and go into the data side of things, shall we? So behind the scenes in Bubble, this is where you can see all of your data that you have. So the types that you've created, what people have put into the system, in what way they've done it. Over time, this builds up into a huge, big, like rich, beautiful database, and very, very messy as well, of course. So the default data type that you have as a user, you always will have users, in theory. And these are the fields that person can have. So there's an email. It automatically has like when they were last modified, when that user was created, and the slug is the URL for that person, the link. But what we need is to create a new field where we can store a person's name. And you can see fields can be loads of different types of things. But for now, I'm just going to say it's a text. So if I go back to my design thing, or workflow even, now if I click here, I can now store that person's name using the input names value. And all this is saying is when this button sign up is clicked, we're going to sign the user up. We want to use these values as the email password and this value as the name. Pretty straightforward. And so in terms of usability, there's things you can do like, as I recommended, you would send an email to that email address. So like send an email to the email address that the person put in saying, hey, welcome aboard. That's my Petrolify voice. Probably don't need to do that. But lots of different things that you could do. So now, if I jump back to my live version of this website and refresh it and take a sip, ooh, put the details back in. So let's refill this. Okay, so I didn't include a subject line for the email, but believe me, behind the scenes, this is just like understood that this person has signed up as a user. And in fact, I think if we go to data and app data, all users. Yeah, so this has just recognized me as a user. I've signed in. Here's my information that it has about me. Not much information, but it will do. So we have a way for users to sign up. What we now need is a way for them to list their petrol for sale and to see other petrol that is for sale. So we're going to need another page that will be the marketplace. Normally with these things, you would have a page where like the people selling stuff would advertise things, like so an Airbnb, the hosts, and then you'd have a separate page where, I don't know what they call them, but like the clients come along to view the stuff. I've only got 11 minutes, so I'm not going to do 2 pages. I'm just going to do one. 11 minutes, crikey. So what we're going to do is we're just going to actually close this page and call it Marketplace. And the last thing I'm going to do here is create, within this workflow, make it so that now that I've created that page, I can make it go to that page when someone signs up. Yeah. One more worry about what I just did there for the moment. So they click the button sign up, they get taken through to this new page, which looks identical because I cloned it, but I'm just going to delete this top bit. And you can even have a little sort of welcome message for that person. So up until now, we've done like static bits of text, but what we can do is have dynamic data. So we could have, say, the current user's name. So when the person signs up and comes through to this page, it will say, hello, Oli. Oh, welcome, Oli, sorry. And, you know, little moments like that are nice little sort of emotional things, but really it's just to show that we have that data and we can reuse it. So the first piece of this puzzle is we want to figure out a way for people to put petrol up for sale. I'm quite regretting this as a choice of marketplace, but hopefully it works. And to have petrol for sale, we need it as a new data type. So let us create a new type, and I'm going to call it petrol. And this is basically a sort of catch-all for all of the information we need to know about each petrol thing for sale. So let's just say like amount, or no, let's just have price, which I'm actually just going to put as a text. So, you know, if someone wants to sell it, they can say 50 quid, keep it casual. And location, where is your petrol that you want to buy? And lastly, I think people want to see the petrol. So I'm gonna make sure that people have to upload an image of the petrol as well. So, I think we're okay. Let's make it clear what they have to do here. Upload your petrol for sale below. So here, what we might have is the first one. What did I say? Price, was it? So, the price. Yeah, I think that's probably fine. And then a location. And an image, I think it was, wasn't it? It was just the three things. So for an image, you just have a picture uploader, so people can just click that. Like when you change your Facebook status picture, I'm not on Facebook, I don't know, but you know what I mean. You can just upload an image and upload an image of your petrol. Some nice rounded corners on this. I don't know why it's doing that, but let's just keep it. Let's just keep it. And lastly, just like when people were signing up, we need a button. So we'll just call that maybe like add to marketplace. So in terms of the workflow, it's kind of similar to before, but instead of signing a user up, like creating a new user, we're creating a new thing. So we're going to create a new petrol where the price is equal to the input that we decided for price. The location is equal to the input location value. And the image is equal to the image uploader, picture uploader's value. So, and one thing I might do here, another little bit of usability is, so reset relevant inputs. So, you know, when you fill in a form and click enter and it deletes everything above it, then that's just doing that automatically for you, which is a nice little touch for your users. So if I now go to the live version of this website, do you know what? Zoom is getting in the way. I'm going to go back to this first page and just delete that email thing because I think that's going to cause things to get upset. Ooh, that navigation thing is not there. Page marketplace. So now if I go back to the live version of this website, with a bit of a drum roll, please, moment here. Need a Zoom drum roll button. My email is oli at, I'll do testo.com because my test.com email already exists and I'll get upset. But if I do this, it's thinking, it's signed me up, it's moved me through to the behind the scenes page. And now I can look at uploading my petrol for sale. So let's try, I'm going to say 50 quid for my first lot of petrol. It's in Edinburgh. I'm in the west of Edinburgh right now, so you can come and collect it. And I got this little picture of this woman filling a carrier bag with petrol at a pump, just as a starter. So you can see when I click add, it resets the inputs, but again, so nothing's kind of really happened. But if we look within the app and look at the data and the app data, I can now see that information has all been stored in my database. So I have, everything about that bit of petrol. But what I need, so I could continue doing those. Actually, I could add. Let's I don't know. I think I've got going for a very relaxed way of doing currency here. I'll go sterling. Got a boot full of petrol here that someone did. It feels like a good price, 100 quid compared to 50 quid for the one bag, but yeah. So if I add that and maybe refresh here, then you can see, so my database of stuff for sale is beginning to fill up. Cool. So I have a way for users to sign up. I have a way for them to put what they want to sell into the marketplace. The last thing I need is for other users to be able to see that stuff for sale. So I'm going to go back to the marketplace. And again, I'm going to do this all on one page just for simplicity. And the last piece of the puzzle is we need something called a repeating group. Now, this is a thing that will display lots of different data. It's going to change how it actually looks just to make things easier. So like when you click on Airbnb and you click on like, I want to see all of the listings in Edinburgh, that's just saying I want to see, a repeating group of all of the listings Airbnb has within Edinburgh. And here I want to see all of the petrol and the data source. So I can say to, how do you do this again? So something I could do, say, is have maybe in fact, I'm just going to have all petrol in the first version of this. So I have this group that is going to display the petrol that we have for sale. I love that there's people still joining this who are just probably have no idea of the context of this. And within this group, you can start adding elements. So, and what you'll see is that it begins to make this ghost version of it below, and that just shows that it understands that you're putting in data that should be repeated. So here we're going to say the current sales petrol price, right? So a bit of information about the petrol that's for sale. And then I guess we'd also have the location. Maybe I'll make that in bold just so we know it's a different thing. And then lastly, I guess we want a picture of the aforementioned petrol. Here, it doesn't seem to be recognizing it. Maybe it is, and I just let's put in a bit of dynamic data and see. So this will be the image. Oh yeah, there we go. So now this understands that this box is looking for data about all of the petrol that we have for sale right now. And if I jump over to our marketplace and refresh, oh, it works. I was not expecting it to work first time. So you can imagine this styled a bit nicer. That, if you go on like Gumtree or Airbnb or Eventbrite or any of these things, it's all just this is some sort of information being put up there and it being displayed back to a different user normally in a sort of meaningful way. So let me do the last little thing here. Let's go for the big one, 200 smackaroos. And we'll go for Aberdeen. Sorry, Michael, I've not represented you yet. And I've got a basement full of petrol here. Yours for collection in Aberdeen. And you can see as soon as I add it, it appears within the marketplace part of the website below. So how are we doing for time? 1 minute left. God, I think that's all I wanted to really show. But what you can then start doing is say have different repeating groups that display different information. So maybe you wanted to only show within this repeating group, you wanted to show ones where the location is say in Edinburgh. Let me type. Then if I go back to my app, yeah, so it'll only show the stuff that's available in Edinburgh. And what you could even have is like a drop-down doodad, like one of these things. And you could have different options where it's like Edinburgh, Stirling, Aberdeen, and then you could select them and it would only show the ones that are necessary there. So let's just take the last minute and I'll quickly show you what you can do with the plugins, because the plugin ecosystem is absolutely huge. So this is when you want your app to start becoming part of a constellation, as to stretch that metaphor a little bit further. This takes a few moments to load normally, but so there's literally like thousands of integrations that are available within the store. So say you wanted to talk to Discord, you're doing a social app for Discord. You could have it post a message to Discord when a certain thing happens. Lots of little sort of stylistic things like, chart elements or that progress bar. But I guess so there's like an Eventbrite integration, there's a Stripe integration. The Stripe one's magical, it just makes money appear somehow. All sorts of different interesting things like, Facebook, PayPal. And you can just say, so like, let's say, what's a good example? Let's just add, say, the Slack plugin, because I work with the Slack thing right now. That's not the one I wanted actually, but let's add another one. Let's add loads of Slack plugins. And what that would let me do is it would let me go back to my thing and say someone adds a new thing for sale. I could then have it post to a channel as a bot or as a user, which might be really useful depending on what your app wants to do. It might be that it needs to communicate with specific Slack groups. Likewise, it could post to Discord or whatever. So possibilities are kind of endless. That was a whistle-top store. I finished whistle-top show around of the thing, and I think that is, my time has stopped with 1 minute to go. Ah, well. There you go. Ready, steady, cook style MVP. I'm going to stop sharing and maybe take a sip, because that is pretty intense to do. And I'm apologies, like I said, that's quite one way. But what I'd really love to do is just kind of talk to you about any questions you have. Like, Michael, I don't know if there's anything you want to kick off with?
Yeah, so I guess first of all, I just want to say thanks very much for that. That was totally awesome and quite impressive. I now know that you can put petrol in plastic bags, which I did not know.
No, don't put petrol in plastic bags, people. Please do not do that.
That wasn't the message I was supposed to take away from it. So if we hand over to questions, I would say feel free to put your question in the chat, or if you want to ask directly, please feel free to raise your hand, virtually speaking. Quick glance to the chat. Have a question from Julie. Can you download the photos that people upload?
Yes.
Well, that was quick, wasn't it?
And yes, I'm just scrolling. I don't get to see the chat during the thing, just because it's sort of shrunk away on the edge here, but I will give full credits to Danny, our accountant, for getting the It's Always Sunny reference. Very good. But yeah, basically, so that would be something that you would set up with a plugin. So you can manually do it. Like, you can literally go into the data behind the scenes, just click download, but that's going to be painful and doesn't scale, obviously. So what you would do is you'd have something that either downloaded it to like Dropbox or Google Drive. It sort of automatically moved it into the right folder for you. Yeah, but totally, there's lots of different automations for file storage.
Okay, brilliant. From Anthony, can you show only charts-based data from a particular user?
Only charts-based data. Let me. As in, sorry, Anthony, I don't know if you want to unmute and just sort of talk me through this quickly.
Sorry, it's a typo. Showing a chart which only populates data from a particular user when they log in, so not publicly facing like earlier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in terms of, I'm trying to avoid just hopping back to sharing my screen this whole time, but I kind of want to show you. But it's, yeah, in terms of the data that is displayed, like that is as controlled as you want. So it could literally just show one data point for one user, or it could show all of the data for every single user that you have on your site. So on the project that I'm building right now, like I have a behind the scenes admin panel that has the information about every single user, when they logged in, like what they've done, blah, 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 blah. It's like an audit log. But for, if you wanted to just have it show only the most basic, like simple bit of data, then, you just pare it down until it says only show data for this user under these circumstances with this, blah.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Next question from John T. What was the biggest challenge learning the software? You said it took 80 hours. Were the first 10 painful, then it got easy, or was it quite smooth to learn?
Ups and downs, for sure. I'd say the first 10 were kind of quite easy, actually. So I'm going to share a bunch of resources with everyone who came today at the end via email. There's some really amazing like DIY guides that exist for Bubble. Like it's literally down to like build your own Airbnb in Bubble, build your own Spotify in Bubble, build your own blah. Like literally, you name an app, they've got like 100 different resources of how you can build a very, I would say, shonky version of that thing. But you can certainly build it. I found in terms of the difficulty, there was sort of just clear moments of challenge. Like I would say, so the first app I built had 3 payment plans, right? Like, so it was like gold, silver, bronze, classic SaaS type thing. Trying to figure out how to get payments to change between each one, that probably took about 20 hours. And that was like banging my head against a brick wall. Just could not figure out how to get this thing working. And I got it in the end, and then no one wanted the app. So it was like, great. My second app, I was like, I'm only having 1 payment plan because it was a waste of time. But what I would say is that the community are just absolutely wonderful. So the Bubble community have been so supportive. Like if you ask them a question in the chat, they have like a forum, they'll just answer it and be really helpful. So if you come across a problem and you just don't know where to go or how to proceed, they're really good. But also, like I've delivered this workshop, or a workshop version of this, for a whole bunch of folks now on our creative program, as I mentioned. And I'm just trying to build this kind of cluster of people building with Bubble, because you do come across moments of it's just like, I don't know how to do this thing. Like I can't reach the next stage in what I want to build. And having people to bounce ideas off is so important.
Brilliant. Okay, how does Bubble work with Google and Apple kits/APIs?
I've never done it, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. I'm gonna just throw my ignorance into the ring there. I would ask on the Bubble forums, like again, so the community will be able to give you every single API that Bubble works with has in-depth. Okay, maybe in-depth is an exaggeration. It has documentation, and you'll be able to explore a lot and see whether or not the specific thing that you wanted to talk to will talk to it in a happy way.
Okay, cool. Could it achieve the payment functions? You talked about your payment pane a second ago.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, just in terms of taking payments. Yeah. So I mean, not only can you take payments from using Bubble, but you can also actually create people who can take payments. So you can create a marketplace where other people can sell services. So think of like, I don't know if you've come across like Gumroad. So it's a marketplace where artists can sell digital assets. And this isn't NFTs or anything, it's like predates that massively. And you could create something like that where people pay you money to be hosted on your marketplace, but also then people pay those people money to use their stuff. So you can do that kind of platform thing where people build on your thing. The payments stuff is super powerful, and Stripe makes it so like almost worryingly easy for people to give you money. I mean, Stripe have now made it so, I mean, speaking of like maximum no code here, they've made it so that you can take payments just via a link, so you send someone a link and it will go through and do all the tax, do everything, it's not like just a PayPal link, it's like a proper business, authenticated link, which is just amazing. Any more questions?
Lots more, all the questions.
Oh God, okay. Go quick fire.
10 minutes, quick fire. How simple is it to push development to the public?
It's literally one. It's almost too simple. There's one button at the top right that lets you move from. I'm going to share my screen. Sorry, I'm going to jump back to doing it very briefly because that is an important question. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
So top right, basically you can just deploy to live like this. If I just call this test. Now this is literally live right now at this link here. So not even the test version. It's just there. So ignore my ridiculously long test name. Like if you had your app called Airbnb, it would be airbnb.bubbleapps.io. Then in terms of moving it onto your own domain, which of course you'd want to do, you just go in. So this is where it gets. It takes 15 minutes, but you just need to follow a guide. If you've not done it before, set up your DNS settings and set things up here. But as you can see, it can only be done on a paid plan, and this is a hobby test plan that I've got here. Yeah, and there's also actually quite decent version control. So, like, say you mess up. I don't think it's actually got it in the hobby version, but there's a little button here which says you can roll back to any time at all. So if you mess up the live version, you can just say, whoa, whatever happens, stop doing that. And it's the same for the database as well, that you can just, if the wrong type of data gets in there, you can just roll it back and say that data shouldn't be there.
Super. And that actually is quite a good segue into, my chat's gone all okay. A segue into the next question, which is from the ever fiscal responsible Dr. Jennifer Scott. How do you pay for Bubble? Does it also host your app once you have created it? That's 2 questions, Jen. You broke the rules.
So that's fine. I will answer them in turn. So you pay just by debit card. I mean, I just pay on my own thing. And so there's a hobby version where you can do like 90% of the functionality. And it's totally free. You can play around, build something, have lots of users on it, but you can't host it on your own domain. So, I mean, when you're at that stage where you want to have like petrolify.com, then you really have to start paying for it. And it's like $30 a month. Like, it's not much at all. There's a tiered approach where when you reach X number of users, or not X number of users even, it's just the amount of data that's going through it. You have to start paying more, and I think it's capped at like $600 a month or something. Maybe it's more. Maybe it's more, to be honest. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but it's super cheap, and you can play around, get a lot of the functionality for free. And what was the second question? Sorry.
The second question was, does it also host your app once you have created it?
Yeah, so it hosts it, but you need your own domain to point it towards. So yeah, it handles absolutely everything. There's no messing around with like AWS or it's hosted on Cloudflare. So I think it's just all managed for you behind the scenes. They're assuming that you are like me and are not from a technical background and have no idea what you're doing with the technical side of things. So they make it as easy as possible.
Excellent. Okay, moving swiftly onwards. Does Bubble have any GDPR compliance mechanisms or plugins?
Good question. It would depend on where the data is hosted, I think, is the biggest issue. And I think that is something that comes up with the professional plans. Like, the more you can choose like the data centers of like where your data actually goes. I would say it's probably not, ironclad, although I mean, what is with GDPR? But certainly there's a lot of discussions on the forums about how you can implement best GDPR practice within your Bubble app. I would search the forums for those and go through it. Yeah, I'm going through this right now with an app that I've built for someone else to figure out how that data should be stored properly, because it's a larger organization and they want to make sure that everything is above board, of course. But again, I mean, this maybe leads on to a more a broader topic of security in general, which I think is an important thing to talk about. And I'm going to very quickly share my screen, but I have just knocked my, I just unplugged my mouse, so I'm going to plug that back in. There you go, tech problems, here we go. Great, because I think privacy is a huge thing that we should talk about, like with the last few minutes that we have, or at least a couple of those minutes. So Bubble is like, the community are super keen that, every app that is built in it is as secure as possible, because I think there's this maybe an idea that I had as well, that NoCode is fundamentally insecure or non-secure, maybe, and that it's just kind of there's nothing there to protect your users' data. And off the back of that, they've made the security it's almost, I think she does protest too much. Like there's loads and loads of security built in. And for you as a builder, so you can create server-side rules as to what data will actually leave the Bubble servers. Say with a user, it's the same kind of logic that you apply for like picking stuff within a repeated group, where it's like, so say the current user's name is I don't know, sorry, I don't have enough data to set this up properly, but you could set rules that say, like, say you were looking at a user's profile page. If you weren't meant to see that user's profile page, then you wouldn't even get the data sent down from the server. And then the kind of belt and braces approach, you can even have it so on the client side, workflow, you could have it so, say when the page is loaded, a really simple example here, if say the current user isn't logged in, then send them back to index. And you could have loads of different complicated bits of logic there, of like, if they're logged in but they have never, they're a seller of petrol, not a buyer of petrol, they shouldn't see this page. Like loads and loads and loads of stuff like that you can play with. Again, it's not simple, but it's there for you to explore.
Excellent. Right, 4 minutes left, and still a few questions to go. Right, very quickly. Grammatically, this could go one of two ways. How good can you make it look, or is it how good can you make it look?
Me personally, very bad. Turns out, yeah, like I said, design is hard. Those people who study it for years and years and years, like they are, pay them to do it. So if you build a website in Squarespace or Wix, it will look. I'm going to say it'll look fine. All those websites kind of look the same these days. Like I think they're a bit dull, to be honest. I do think that I think I mentioned this in my blog post, that there's like an opening for like sort of more outsider art websites using Bubble, because it's just going to look a bit sort of weird and sort of almost incomplete just because you don't have design trading. I think there's going to be a huge opportunity for designers who understand tools like Bubble. Like right now with one of the projects I'm working on, like I would love to just pay someone to come on and just fix the design, make sure the fonts are the right size, the spacing is the right thing, like colors are blah, really simple stuff like that. But I don't know anyone who does that yet. It's not much of a marketplace for designers interested in NoCode. Yeah.
Cool. Question and answered actually. So for mobile apps, any other similar no-code processes output for building mobile apps? And I've got another comment on below talking about app inventors. Anything else spring to mind?
I haven't used any mobile app creators. I mean, I would say this is maybe veering into Jeff Goldblum territory of should you build this, like that it's probably for most people, like we talk to a lot of startups. Michael knows this, Martin Claire knows this as well. In Codebase, we just talk to startups all day, every day. And most of the time, like the app that they want to build probably shouldn't be an app, like an iOS app or an Android app. Bubble will make a really good web app that just works in a browser for you. And that could be your MVP. So in that ecosystem diagram I showed, there are app builders, which I've never played with. I would say that they are, I would just have a look at them. I'll send my slide with that slide in it afterwards, and perhaps we can have another no-code meetup where we talk about mobile no-code dev.
Cool. And in the last 2 minutes, last question, what other no-code applications have you tried? Any of you found great, rubbish, or meh?
I am a bit of a Bubble purist, I have to admit. I just kind of went off the deep end on it and just sort of spent so long on it that I've learned so much about it. There's a really great guy I would say to follow on Twitter or to sign up to his thing, a guy called Max Hanen, who runs something called the 100 Days of No-Code. And it's like half an hour a day where you just learn a sort of new little bit of no-code, and it goes across all sorts of different apps and like that kind of operational no code I was talking about. He's actually giving a talk at Napier University, online next week, I think. So it might be interesting to go and see. I'm also giving a talk at that same thing. But I'll send a follow-up with that because I would love to explore the no-code ecosystem more, because I think there's going to be a huge horses for courses moment of this app should do that. This tool will help you if you want to do a marketplace. This tool will help you if you want to do something else.
Excellent. And with that, and 1 minute to go, that just leaves me enough time to say thank you very much, Oli, for that. That was awesome session. I have put the info@onecodebase.co.uk email in the chat. If you have any questions that occur to you at 2 o'clock in the morning and just need them answered, or you want to know anything more about Codebase in general, please just email that and someone will actually look at it at some point and get back to you. But yeah, thank you very much. Exactly on time, Oli. Awesome job. And great. Thanks everyone for turning up.